Now, when you say high school was in Welsh?
No, I graduated from the elementary school in Welsh. Then I...
That was like 8th grade?
Yeah, now that brings us up to 1913.
Okay.
Then...
You were living in North Fork, but
still living in
school
North
was
Fork,
in Welsh.
but going to school in Welsh because when I started school in Welsh, Annie was still living there. But they only lived there about not the biggest part of a year until they moved up to Newtown, moved up here.
Oh, and you were still
And
there.
and then I had to commute from North Fork to Welsh by train.
Oh, you mean you used to live with your sister during the week while you were going to school?
While I was going to school in Welsh, yes, until I graduated in Welsh. But they moved before the graduation. See, they moved, and I was doing the commuting, and then we had the graduation in Welsh. That is from the elementary school.
Wasn't there an elementary school in North Fork?
Well, not at that time there was, but it didn't go up as far as the grades didn't go up as far as the far you're supposed to go to be able to enter high school. Now, see, we only had a what they call a second grade high school. That was only 2 years. But then the year that I moved up here, they made it into a 4-year course.
Okay, so...
But I wasn't there for that then, see.
Alright, so when you got out of 8th grade and went to 9th grade, were you still
Well,
there? Where were you
yes,
living?
well,
We're still in West Virginia,
well,
right?
no, wait, I graduated from the 8th grade, then I started back into school in the high school in North Fork, which at the time was held up in the ballroom of the Masonic Temple. We had a Masonic Temple in North Fork, and up in the ballroom they had the high school. The first year of high school started there because they were putting the 2 more floors on the school, putting an addition and 2 more floors on a school that was already there. It was only a 2-room school,
right.
But they put put another story above it, and made two more classrooms, and then put an addition on it that they used for what they call a manual training.
Right.
On the first floor. But then there were two classrooms on the second floor, which was used for the high school.
Okay, I follow you now.
That was Professor Dolly. I have a picture here that I showed you the other night. That was our school.
So then you were able to finish out.
Then I finished finished 2 years high there before we come up here. Now after Annie moved, Mom became very popular. Had died in the meantime. He died in 1914.
Oh, so he died right after he stopped being commissioner?
Yeah, well, no, he was still commissioner when he died. He died in office, yeah.
What did he die from?
Pneumonia. He and Uncle Frank had been up to the World Series up in Philadelphia. And one of the days coming back, they were on one of these open trolleys, and it was rain, and it got pretty wet.
Right.
And he caught cold, and he went over to Annie's for a couple of days. But then when he didn't improve, before that he had an operation on his throat for a not tonsillectomy, but it was a sort of a growth in his throat that he had removed,
Right.
and it left him very weak.
Right.
And then he went up to this baseball game, which he shouldn't have done, and.
Right.
Caught this cold, and that's what finally developed into pneumonia and died.
So that must have been
That was in
a shock.
I was 17 then. That was in 19.
So you were just finishing off school.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hadn't finished school yet.
You're still in school.
Yeah, I was still in school. But that was in 1914, November the November the 14th, I think it was, 1914. In November sometime, I don't know.
Right.
Anyhow.
So then what,
Then after that, why, Mom became very discouraged about living down so far away from Annie. Annie was her favorite, more or less. So Annie kept after him to come up north.
you were still living in your house? And
We're still living there in our house, yeah.
So the next stage, the next era we talk about is when you move up?
When I moved up when we moved to Pennsylvania.
Let me ask you before we do that, where does the Hatfield-McCoy story come in?
Well, that comes in sometime
Later?
No,
Oh,
that
okay.
was earlier. That was at the time that Pop was in the saloon business down in Davie.
Right.
Because Davie wasn't too far away from, well, let's see, the Hatfield and McCoys lived on the Kentucky side of the Tug River, which divided West Virginia and Kentucky in the southeastern part of the state. And they were over on the Kentucky side, and of course I never saw anything of them, but we heard an awful lot about them because they were feuding all the time. But we never got that close to them. The closest we got to them was the nephew of one of the head of this Hatfield clan. They used to call them clans. He was a nephew, and he was at the time that we knew him, he was a doctor, Dr. Hatfield, and he got into politics, and he and Pop were on the same court, the county court. He was the president of the county court, and Pop was one of the commissioners. Pop was a commissioner.
Right.
And that's how we got in touch with him. When he lived about, I'd say about 3 miles below us at a place by the name of Ekman. That's where he had his office. And but at the time we used to have him. He wasn't exactly our family doctor, because Dr. Clark mostly was the one that fixed my leg. He was the one that used to, because he only lived up at the place by the name of Kyle, about a mile above us. And of course he was the closest one.
Right.
But we were in touch with this other doctor too.
Right.
And he used to in fact he treated Emma when he operated on Emma when she had what they call a floating kidney, which she had gotten from a sled accident earlier in her life when they first moved down from Tremont and lived over at a place by the name of Simmons. That was before my time. And but she always had trouble with this back trouble.
Right.
And that's what it was. It was what they call a floating kidney, which her one kidney, they were on the ice, and she was on a sled, as I heard it. And some of these smart guys got a hold of the sled and were skating real fast, and they swung it. And the sled slid across the ice and right into a tree stump. And that's what got her.
Back on. We're getting ready for your move to Pennsylvania, but I wanted to ask you, so you were about 17 when you decided to move soon after your father died? Your mother
Yeah, the
decided.
year after he died.
And when you finished school then?
Yeah,
You decided to
yeah,
move.
yeah.
Were you upset by moving?
No,
Did you have a lot of
No, not
friends
too
you were
much.
leaving, or
Not too much, I could acclimate myself almost anywhere.
no girlfriends you were leaving?
No girlfriends. The only girlfriend I had down there was when I was in grade school. Margaret Walker. For a while.
For a while.
But she went off to finishing school up in Roanoke, Virginia. And I never saw her afterwards.
Okay, why don't you tell me about what happened from the time
Well, we
leaving
moved
West
up.
Virginia?
We moved up to Pennsylvania, and for the first few months, I don't know how long it was, we had our furniture stored in Philadelphia.
You had sold your house in West Virginia?
No, we still had the house in West Virginia, but we went up to Annie's. Went to Annie's, and we were there from about sometime in December to sometime in March, I guess.
Do you know what her address was there? Or what the
Well,
road was called or anything?
she lived out on Swamp Road
In Newtown.
in Newtown, yeah, about a mile and a half from town, on Swamp Road. I don't know what her
That's good.
box number was or anything else, but
Right. Those things change.
but
And were you renting the house in West
we
Virginia?
rented the house to a man by the name of Mr. Moore. He was a station agent at North Fork at that time, and he and his family moved in.
Did you? I didn't ask you this before, but did you know that the address of your house in North Fork?
Just North Fork.
Was there? It wasn't.
No
was
local
there
address,
no
just
street?
North Fork, West Virginia.
Okay.
Because there were just so few people down there. There were, well, I'd say there was less than 500 people anyhow in the whole surrounding.
So the mailman knew everybody.
And well, we didn't have a mailman. We went to the post office. We had a post office box, number 468.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. All right.
That's
No,
the closest I can give you to our address. No, box number 468.
Okay. All right.
And,
So, all right. Now we're back in Pennsylvania.
well, we were still living at Annie's, and that was quite a winter we spent there with them.
Why do you say that?
Well,
Crowded?
no, well, it wasn't exactly crowded. It was her family and Mom and Pop and Uncle Frank. Emma stayed down in West Virginia. She stayed down there and lived at the hotel.
Because she was working down there.
She was working down there, yeah. She got a room at the hotel, I think, at that time. And she'd come back and forth every once in a while. She'd come up, but I got sort of ahead of myself on. You say talk about recreation. We used to come up to Philadelphia about every other year
From West Virginia.
from West Virginia.
Oh. What did you do up there?
Well,
You
we'd,
had relatives?
we'd
or?
visit relatives here, over in Newtown, that is Annie's, and then we'd go up to Tremont and stay a couple of days up in Tremont. And I still had aunts and uncles living up there at that time. But,
By train, you used to come up.
oh yeah, it was an overnight trip by Pullman. And at that time, I think the fare was, I think it was less than $20 for to come all the way up by Pullman.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. If it was an overnight trip, we'd leave North Fork about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd get up to Philadelphia about 8:30 the next morning. Broad Street.
So when you were living with your sister, you didn't have a job and you didn't know where you were going to live.
No, not at that time. I didn't get a job until we come into Philadelphia. We moved into Philadelphia to our first address was 5854 Spruce Street. We relocated on Spruce Street.
So you rented something?
We rented.
An apartment?
No.
Town?
A house.
Row house?
A row house, yeah.
And who was living there then, when you moved there?
Well, mom and Uncle Frank and I, and whenever Emma would come up, she'd always be at home there. But
So,
just mom and Emma, mom and Uncle Frank and I. Uncle Frank worked. He worked at he worked down there at one of the schools as a maintenance man for a while. I don't know what school it was, but it was West Philadelphia High or one of the schools down there.
mm-hmm.
And I didn't get a job until later on, my first job, which we moved into Spruce Street around sometime in March. That was the first time. That was before I went into the service. See, I was still at 5854 Spruce Street when I went into the service.
Oh, okay. So before you got a job, you went into the service.
Well,
It was around that same time.
no, I had a job before I went into the service. My first job was at the what they call the Milburn Mills. It was a big flour making concern out around Milburn Mills, which was 63rd and Market Street.
You mean flour like you eat?
Yeah,
Baking?
yeah, they made flour there, and it was a summer job, just a temporary job, assistant to the bookkeeper, and I was only there from I just forget when I went in there, May or June. And it was just from then until Labor Day, till after Labor Day that from then I went to Bailey Banks and Biddle. I got a job at Bailey Banks and Biddle. And that was in 1916 that we were up there. And in 1917, I left Milburn Mills around Labor Day, and around sometime in October of that same year, I went to work at Bailey's.
And you were doing sales work there, or
In the insignia department, yes, selling in the insignia department. And I was in Bailey's at the time I went into the service.
Okay, because World War I was happening at this
Yes,
time.
at that time,
Well,
World War One.
Before we talked about the service, I had another question. I always remembered hearing that you may have had a chance to go to Annapolis
Well,
at some point. When
that
was that? Was that earlier?
That was when we were living in North Fork. There was a Senator White that let's see, where did he live now? He lived close by us there, and we always had people visiting us, a governor, or a senator, or some prominent politician would be at our house quite often. And I think this was Senator White, senator from West Virginia. And he had all senators, I think, have a chance to get someone into one of the service academies. You could take your pick, either one. And Pop always had the idea that he'd like me to get into Annapolis. But after he died, that went up in smoke. It didn't materialize. I never even got a chance to.
So there was talk about it.
They just talked.
There was a possibility.
There was a possibility, but I never got the
changed.
opportunity. The opportunity, I never got the opportunity to try for either one of them.
Right.
He had his choice. He said he could put him in the Naval Academy in Annapolis or West Point. Whichever one he could get into, if he was fortunate enough or lucky enough to get into either one of them, or either one of them. But he could take a chance on one of the two of them.
Mhm.
And Pop always more or less leaned towards Annapolis.
Mhm.
But as I say, when he died, that died with him.
Mhm.
As far as I was concerned.
Right. Right. That was the dream that he had.
Yeah, the dream that he had died with him.
So how did you come to be in the Navy?
Well, I come to be in the Navy. I was at Bailey Banks and Biddle. They had what they called at that time the Bailey Company, which was more or less composed of the various salesmen and others that wanted to get into it. It was a company that Mr. Bailey, that Colonel Joseph T. Bailey himself organized for the protection of the store.
Mm-hmm.
And he outfitted us all in uniforms and bought guns and all for us. And we used to drill up on the roof of the Bailey building. I have pictures of it
Right.
in there, of the Bailey Company drilling on the roof of the Bailey Banks and Biddle. But things went along, and I had friends that got into the Navy. I wanted to get into the service, and I tried various times to get into the naval aviation or the Army aviation. But at that time, the time that I tried to get in, they were closed to enlistments. But as it happened, this one group, the United States Naval Aviation Reserves, was having an opening, and I tried for that. I went down to the Naval Home, which was at 24th and Grays Ferry Road at that time, which is still there. It was a naval home, that is for retired Navy men.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a recruiting group there too, and that's where I joined the Navy, the Naval Home. And I was assigned to I wasn't assigned at the time, but I had to wait for quite a while, a couple of months. That was sometime in April or May, I guess, that I joined. And I had to wait for a couple of months until I heard from them.
So you continued to work?
I continued to work while I was waiting, yes.
And you were still living on Spruce Street?
Still living on Spruce Street, yeah. But, and I didn't get my call until the 5th of July, 1918.
Right after 4th of July.
Right after the 4th of July. In fact, we spent the 4th of July, Emma and Mr. Howard, HB, drove up from West Virginia to be with us up at the farm, Annie's farm, on the 4th of July. And Emma and HB drove me down to the Pier 19 North Wharves the next day to enter the service. And from there I was shipped to Gulfport in the United States Naval Reserve Aviation. I had an A behind it, which meant aviation, and I got mixed up a couple of times, and I got into the ship's company by mistake. But I soon got out of that. I spent one night there, and I said, no boy, this is not for me. So I got out of that and got back to my old group that I had gone down with. They were all in the same group.
Right.
I was in there we got down there about the middle of July, let's see. And I was in there until the following December.
At that location?
At that location, yeah. And in the meantime, Mom was still living at Annie's up on the farm. Then that was in 1918, and 18 ran out. I got mustered out in the 31st of December, 1918, and I spent 1919 on the road home, on the train. And I was mustered out, and I was mustered out to Newtown, which was Annie's home at that time. So we were still there from, I got up about the 3rd of January until March 1919.
Right.
And we decided to come back to Philadelphia.
You were at the farm then?
I was at the farm then. I spent from let's see, I got up to Newtown about the 34th of January, and we were there until March.
Mm-hmm.
January, February, and part of March. And we come into, we was going to go back to housekeeping again, Mom and Uncle Frank and I, on the
And you needed to rent another place?
17th of March. I think it was on Patty's Day we come in. And we found a place which was just around the corner from where we had lived.
Right.
At 311 South 58th Street. That's where we moved. And we lived there from March, about a month or so, till the 19th of April, 1919. That was the day Mom died. She died then.
So you're a month in your new place.
Just about a month, at 311 South 58th Street.
And how did she die?
Heart
Attack?
stroke.
Sure.
We had been up to the movies. It was a Saturday night, and Emma, Mom, and I had been up to the movies.
Emma had moved back up here?
Emma had moved back up with us then when we up to 311 South 58th Street. She come back from the south, but she had been back and forth different times, but that was April the 19th, 1990. What do you want to say something? But that was later on.
Okay, got us back on. All right, you were at the movies.
We were at the movies, and after the show, we were walking back home, and I stopped to buy a collar, and Emma and Mom went on ahead. So it took me a little while to buy this collar, and I was walking down 60th Street, and they had walked down. We were within walking distance of the movie. The movie was up on 60th and Market, and we used to walk down 60th Street to Spruce, then down Spruce. And of course, I was walking down there, and about halfway down Spruce Street, when I got to 60th and turned down Spruce, about halfway down Spruce Street, Jean Burns, which was a neighbor of ours, come running up to me, and she says, "You better come pretty fast." She says, "I'm afraid your mother is dying." So boy, we got down here in a hurry. By the time I got there, she was gone.
Do you remember how old she was? About
61. She was the same age as Pop. Papa died 5 years earlier at the age of 61, and she was 5 years later at the age of 61.
Right.
She died. So they were both both buried up in Tremont.
So then it was just you and Emma
And
Uncle Frank?
Uncle Frank, and then we decided not to stay there, and we rented a place up at 5842 Spruce, which was up the street a little ways, and that's where we started in again.
Mm-hmm.
Another start.
Were you working at this time? Had you found a job
Well,
in Philadelphia?
yes. At that time, a friend of ours, a neighbor of ours, when we lived at 5742, 5754, they lived at 5756, which is our neighbor, by the name of Burns, Jack Burns. And he and I were very friendly, and we palled around a good bit. And it was his sister that come up and told me that. And see, they are just on the other street. They were out on the main Spruce Street, and we were around on a side street on 58th, South 58th Street. We were just around the corner.
Right.
Our backyards practically were just opposite each other.
Mm-hmm.
Only we were on this side street, and they were on Spruce Street.
Right.
So we decided we couldn't live there any longer. I just don't know what the circumstances were, but Emma didn't like it there, and neither did Uncle Frank, because it was a very small place. In fact, it was much smaller than we'd been accustomed to. So we were looking around and found this place up on 5842 Spruce Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we lived until I married and come up here.
Okay, so where did you work?
At the time that Mom died, I was working at the shipyard. I had gone over there with Jack. Jack Burns was working over there. He was a draftsman at the Cramp, William F. Cramp and Son shipbuilding, ship and engine building company, over on Richmond Street. That's over in Port Richmond, what they call now is called Port Richmond. And that was the one of the largest shipyards in the country at one time. They all made all the battleships and fighting ships for the Navy for many years before that. But this was after the war, and they were doing building other kinds of ships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working there. I started in as what they call a ship fitter's helper, which was after some of the ship was put together. We would go around and find places where they'd missed something here and there, and we'd have to make it up for it. The ship fitter used to have to make that up for him, and then they used to have the ship fitter used to be the one that would be on the job after the riggers, what they call riggers, had placed various parts of the ship together, and these riggers used to go around and line up the various holes for the riveters. It's quite a job.
Bigger scale than
Yeah,
model ships.
oh yes. It was on a grand scale.
Right.
And these ship fitters used to go around and put a bolt here and a bolt there and to bolt the thing together before the riggers would come along. And we were working at that time. The man I was working for, a fellow by the name of I think his name was Tierney or something like that, and he was a regular ship fitter, and I was his helper.
Right.
And we used to walk around with a wrench and a bucket of bolts and put a bolt here and there and fit it up. In fact, the ship fitters were the ones that were putting the ship together.
Right. Putting the pieces together.
Putting the pieces together. That is frames, bulkheads, what they call deep tanks, and this was an oil ship that I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they put me on. Later it was called the Algonquin. And I was put on this ship with this man, and I worked for him well, I started in 1919, around October 1919. I worked there for no, wait a minute.
Did you stay at this?
I
shipyard?
worked there. I was working there when Mom died,
All right.
and she died on the 19th of November. Was it?
Or April.
April,
April.
19th of April.
Right, a month after
Yeah.
you had moved to
Yeah,
your house.
about a month after we moved to.
So did you stay with the shipyard for a while?
I
or?
stayed with the shipyard from 1919 until 1921.
Is that also the same time when you were rowing crew?
Well, I was.
Did you started that for your?
Oh, that was I got ahead of myself there. I was rowing, not crew. I didn't.
Well,
I
with
never,
the club,
I was rowing at the Mola Boat Club. That was when I was working at Bailey Banks and Biddle. That was just a
that was
recreation.
That was before you went to.
That was
the
before I
Navy.
went to the shipyard. Before I went into the service, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. While I was working at Bailey Banks and Biddle, there was a fellow down there that was. I think he was a member out there.
Probably that would be.
And I got to the Mola Boat Club, but I wasn't in there very long. Just about maybe one summer or so.
Right. And what did you, besides working, did you work at the shipyard 5 days a week or 6 days a week? Do you remember?
Oh, I worked at the shipyard from, well, we used to get over there about 8:30, and from 8:30 to about 4:30. And of course, I had a long ride from the shipyard. I used to have 2 trolleys. From the shipyard, I used to have the Route 15 trolley that ran on Girard Avenue, all the way to 60th and Haverford, Girard and Haverford Avenue. Then I'd have to get another trolley on 60th Street to take me down to Spruce Street. Used to transfer.
Do you
One
remember
trolley to another.
what you were paid when you were working at the shipyard?
$23 a week. That was my salary as far as I remember.
And what did you do for fun when you weren't working?
Well, at that time I had a combo orchestra playing around Philadelphia.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you played piano?
Play piano, yes. I was
And-
playing with what they call we called our group the Texans. But we didn't look any more like a Texan than you and I.
What
But,
were the other pieces? What other instruments?
Oh, there were piano, violin,
Drums?
saxophone, drums, tenor banjo, 2 tenor banjos, and
Bass?
we had 2 saxophones too. That is an alto and a bass saxophone.
So
And
you
we-
played in what type of
We
places?
played it for school dances, frat dances, down around. We went to get a couple of jobs down around the University of Pennsylvania in front of a couple of the frat houses down there. We played at the different hotels, the Majestic, the Bellevue Stratford, the what was that name of that big hotel? Oh, different places, wherever we'd happen to get a job. And then then in the meantime, we were playing at most of the time, we played out at Yeadon, which was about a couple of miles outside of Philadelphia, on the Baltimore Pike, just this side of Lansdale. The Yeadon School. One of the fellows that was a violinist there lived out that way. And he used to get us an awful lot of jobs at the Yeadon School. That's where we played an awful lot, at the Yeadon School.
Weekend night.
Yeah, Saturday nights mostly.
Right.
From 8 to 12.
I didn't ask you this before, but did someone give you piano lessons when you were growing up, or how did you
Well,
start with the piano?
I took some piano lessons from this girl I showed you her picture yesterday, Miss Edwards. I took some piano lessons from her, and I used to take organ lessons. When I started on a pump organ from a woman by the name of she was later one of our school teachers in the grade school in North Fork, Miss Ritter. She was a music teacher. She taught music too.
You had a piano at home?
Oh yes, yeah. We always had a piano at home. No wait, no, not always.
After you got
Yes, we did. Yeah, we had a piano at home. The old piano that we gave to what's her name up here. We had that at home. It was in the front room.
So nobody else in your family played too much, but you just
No,
had a few
nobody.
lessons,
No. Emma used to. She used to like to play the guitar. She had a guitar. And but Annie used to play. Annie used to play the organ. And Emma used to play guitar. Somebody taught her to play at a guitar. She didn't.
right.
She wasn't really very good at it, but she enjoyed herself, with it.
Right.
But we played all around Philadelphia there, north, south, west Philadelphia, and out in the suburbs sometimes. And that went on for about, practically during the 20s, during the time I was at the
Shipyard.
At the shipyard, yes. And part of the time when the shipyard, they went on strike in 1921. Early 1921, they went on strike. I was a member of one of the unions, the Shipfitters Union, which you had to be in order to work. And I went to one of their meetings out in Kensington, and after that I got out of it. The shipyard practically closed. First the riggers went out on strike, then the painters went out on strike, then finally got down to the ship builders, or the ones that I was working for.
Right.
They went out on strike. They practically pulled the whole yard out in time, and that was practically the end of the Cramp shipyard.
Did you end up going?
I never went back. I never went back to the shipyard. No, because it practically went out of business.
So when
They did reopen later on, years and years later, to do some finishing of the I got sort of ahead of myself there. I was working on a tanker at the time that I went in. Then when that was finished, they put us on what they call a car ferry,
mm-hmm.
which was down between Key West and Miami. Where it used to run between and they used to ferry whole trains. What it was called a car ferry.
Mm-hmm.
And they built tracks right onto this thing, and they used to run a whole trainload of cars, engine and all, on this ferry, and they'd ferry it from Key West. This whole train used to go from Key West, I think, to up around Miami somewhere. I don't know just
mm-hmm.
exactly where.
So it was one
But
of
that
the
was
first
well,
ones.
that was what they call a car ferry.
Right.
Then after that was finished, I was put on to work on a cruiser.
Mhm.
The cruiser, I can't think of the name of it, but it was later sunk in the Second World War. I know that happened to it.
Mhm.
The one that I was working on, that I helped to lay the keel for it.
And then you went and strike
Then I went back to Bailey Banks and Biddle.
when you left.
When I left
When
the
the strike.
shipyard, I went back to Bailey Banks and Biddle again. That was the only place I could get a job.
Did you go back to
And
the insignia?
they took me back. No, I was in the mail order department at that time. That was
This
a different
in
a different
1921?
different department. That was in I think it was 1921, by the fall of 21. And I stayed there for a couple of years, till 1923, I think it was. I left Bailey's. In the meantime, I had gotten acquainted with Art Constable. He was working there. He worked in the what department did Art work in? Oh, he worked in the insignia department, the same department I was in. But
We're back on. So you met Art, who
I met
wasn't
Art.
married yet. He was a
no,
young guy.
no, neither one of us. But his future wife was working at Bailey Banks and Biddle. She was working in the cashier's department, and I was in the mailer department, which was on the second floor.
Right.
I wasn't down on the store floor this time.
Right.
But now wait, I'm getting a little ahead of myself there too. I went there as the